Could Congress ban cryptocurrency? Lawmakers could face pressure to make it illegal in the U.S. after the stunning collapse of the FTX cryptocurrency exchange. Here's the Senate Banking Chairman Sherrod Brown this morning responding to the suggestion Congress should outlaw the digital currency.
I share that thought, although banning it is very difficult because it will go offshore and who knows how that will work. So this is a complicated, unregulated pot of money.
So let's discuss all of this with Republican Congressman French Hill of Arkansas. He is a member of the Financial Services Committee, and he has an A rating from a pro-crypto lobbying group, Crypto Action Network. Hi, Congressman Hill. So what is your take? Should Congress consider banning crypto altogether?
Well, Pamela, it's good to be with you. Merry Christmas and happy first night of Hanukkah. I think the important thing to think about here is that we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is, that blockchain technology in the future to reduce agency costs and make certain business transactions better, accompanied by some sort of a digital payment, is something that we want to see that innovation in the United States and led by U.S. companies and U.S. innovators. So I can't be a fan of the idea of banning cryptocurrency or digital assets in the U.S. I think we've got to have an effective definition and an effective regulatory system, and that'll benefit the U.S. investors and I think the whole idea of blockchain.
So, as you probably know, actor Benjamin McKenzie, he had testified on the Hill. He had called cryptocurrency the largest Ponzi scheme in history. What would you tell a family member who wants to invest in crypto?
Well, I think it's absolutely an unregulated buyer beware market with a lot of fraudsters engaged. You know, this is the 14th anniversary of the Bernie Madoff fraud that was in the news, and now FTX, I think, will far dwarf anything that Bernie Madoff did wrong, with over 1 million creditors. So I would say I would not recommend people invest in cryptocurrency if they don't have the money to risk, because I don't think it's a transparent, clear, and well regulated market. It's an experimental item out there in innovation, and sophisticated people themselves gave money to Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, and they've lost that money.
Right. So, but what about oversight then? You know, okay, so it's buyer beware. Is Congress going to do more to crack down?
Two comments there. One, I think there are existing securities laws that the Securities and Exchange Commission and commodities laws around the Commodities Future Trading Commission that should have been put in place, and those two watchdog agencies could have done more, I think, to protect investors and given transparency even to FTX as it was constructed. In Congress, I believe you'll see a bipartisan effort to define a digital asset and regulate digital assets. And we've already made strides at that this fall with work by Maxine Waters of California, working with Patrick McHenry of North Carolina on a bill to regulate stable coins.
I want to turn to Kevin McCarthy in the pursuit of the Speaker's gavel. It's still a lot up in the air for next month when Republicans have the majority of the House. Representative Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin told CNN's Jake Tapper that Republicans, quote, will get there, unquote, on McCarthy. What do you think? Do you think he can get the 218 votes he needs, considering 5 members have come out to say they oppose him?
Well, Kevin McCarthy won a secret ballot in the Republican conference, 85% to be nominated as Speaker-elect. I support his efforts. He's worked tirelessly to recruit good candidates, define the visionary legislative agenda that's in the American commitment to America. And Kevin deserves a shot at being Speaker of the House, and I plan on supporting him. I think he'll get there.
You do think he will get there, so you agree with that. Okay, so I want to ask you about another issue right now, crisis at the border, the immigration crisis. Border officials are preparing for a surge of migrants when Title 42 expires on Wednesday. Republicans, they have been quick to pin this crisis on President Biden, but White House official Keisha Lance Bottoms said the onus is on Congress to figure out a solution. Let's listen.
The president has said he wants to get things done in a bipartisan manner. remember, Republicans will control the House. So the need for Republicans in Congress to say what they won't do has now been removed. Now tell us what you will do to work with the president to make sure that we have comprehensive immigration reform.
So what do you say to that, Congressman?
Well, in 2018, Republicans put comprehensive immigration reform on the House floor.
But 41
in two
Republicans
different
voted
pieces.
against that.
True, but that's
Yeah.
a completely different Congress. My point is that we had leadership to develop in committee comprehensive immigration reform and border security. We didn't get any support from Democrats on that. And we've had no support from Joe Biden on border security since he was sworn into office. In fact, he did away with the Trump policies that by the end of the Trump administration were working, and the president didn't replace them with anything, Pamela. That's what's disappointing to the American people. Unsafe streets, record amounts of fentanyl, record amounts of human trafficking at risk in the country. And I think Republicans do have concrete, specific proposals we'd make to both reform immigration and secure the border.
I just want to be clear here, though, because look, the bottom line is both Republicans and Democrats, they say it's a problem. Nothing has been done. Both have been majorities in Congress. Both have been in the White House. That's the bottom line. But I do want to be clear with our viewers on the fentanyl aspect and so forth. I know that that is a common talking point. A majority of the fentanyl seized, it is at legal ports of entry, and a majority are from legal residents or American citizens. So I do want to point that out. But you know, what else? I mean, what specifically would you do? What specifically, as a Republican who's going to be in the majority in the House, what specifically would you do?
Well, first, I've been to the border 7 times in the past 7.5 years, listening to county judges, sheriffs, state police officials, border patrol agents, customs agents, listening to on the ground precisely what we should do. Here's what they tell me, and they would tell the president if he would show up at the border and listen. Number one, enforce the existing immigration laws. They're not doing that. We're not deporting felons who are in the country illegally at the same rate of even President Obama. We're not enforcing the asylum process correctly. President Trump made some proposals to do that. So number one, do that. Next, add judges. We added judges during the Trump administration. We need to continue to add judges to adjudicate those cases. We need to amend the laws, the immigration laws, and we can recommend, for example, the definition of credible fear should be fine-tuned there. And then we need to build the border security that the Border Patrol recommends. And that's what President Trump tried to do in the fight over the so-called border wall. And President Biden stopped building it. And we're still paying for it. We're just not building it. So there's a number of concrete proposals. But first and foremost, the administration should go to the border and listen to the people whose job it is to secure it for those best recommendations.
And the part about still paying for it, not building it, we need a bit of a fact check there. But I want to move on because Governor Asa Hutchinson from your state of Arkansas, he said today, this morning, that he is very seriously considering a 2024 run for the White House. And then you have Republican Senator Pat Toomey, who you have worked closely with, also weighing in on the future of the GOP. And here's what he said.
I've heard from many formerly very pro-Trump voters that they think it's time for our party to move on. So yes, I think that process is underway. It's not a flip of a switch. It doesn't happen overnight. He still has a significant following, that's for sure. But I do think his influence is waning.
So in your district, you get the sense that people want a different leader than former President Trump.
Well, here in Arkansas, it's a very red state, and I think people are wanting Republican leadership in 2024. And what I've heard from my counties is they're open-minded about that. Many of the supporters in my district are attracted to Governor DeSantis. Governor Hutchinson has supporters. The point is that we have a deep bench of talented Republicans that could run for the 2024 presidential election, and I think that process is well underway as we turn the new year. And my recommendation is,
would you like to see one of those other leaders?
I think both political parties ought to not renominate President Trump and President Biden. I'm for generational change. I think it would be good for the country to go in a new direction there. And I think we've got a remarkably talented Republican bench to run for the Republican nomination.
You just answered that question. And I also want to circle back because we're sticklers for facts on this show. On the immigration front, in July, the Biden administration actually did allow funds to close the border wall in Arizona, parts of the border wall, announced plans to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there. Final words from you, Congressman.
That's a teeny tiny step just for political purposes before the midterm elections. There are hundreds of miles of border wall that we've funded to be built that are not being built. That was a very modest switch in the Biden policy.
All right. Well, Republican Congressman French Hill, I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be with you, Pam.